There's been something interesting going on lately in, I guess, like American media and American politics, is that two people have recently been claimed by conservative circles, despite not always like conforming to these far-right GOP beliefs, and that is Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. And for one person, it's very clear what they're doing. Elon Musk is just very, very butthurt that some people in the Democratic Party have called him out, and he's recently had allegations against him. What's a good way to dodge that? Well, pretend you are a Republican and it's a leftist hit job. That's what Elon Musk has been doing. Something Elon Musk has in common, though, with Joe Rogan is it feels like they're both boomer divorced dads. Elon Musk is just embarrassing, acting like he's a 14-year-old Redditor, and he's just trying to appeal to the group that will be his biggest sycophants. But with Joe Rogan, it's actually a bit different. I firmly believe Joe Rogan just had his brain broken by the pandemic, and he has just slid down this conservative rabbit hole where he is now pretty much just a generic conservative talking head who might have some more like libertarian leaning. So today what I wanted to do in this video, it's not going to be like comprehensive. I'm going to go through like years of Joe Rogan footage. It's not going to be like my Bill Maher video or my Russell Brand videos, but I just want to talk about this in like the recent context, because Joe Rogan's own subreddit, where you think you'd get a lot of his biggest fans, have actually turned on him for recent takes, because he has changed so much in 2 years from being a guy who I guess was like centrist, centre-left, supported like a lot of progressive things, and now has slid firmly into just being some generic Western or American conservative. So all of that in the video today. If you want to support my channel, please like the video. And today's question for you, I maybe have two for you. Where did you first encounter Joe Rogan, and did you either have a positive or negative view of his podcast? And the second question is, do you know anyone in your life who has had their brain pretty much melted by listening to Joe Rogan and has basically given up their own personality to conforming to being more like Joe Rogan? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to support my work continuing for the future, support me on Patreon. I want to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and the benefits of that are getting access to my Nintendo Switch friend code at the moment, and also the private patrons Discord server. Also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter, on Instagram. Join my subreddit down in the description, and also check out my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra, where I archive all my live streams. And yes, I've actually been pretty good at uploading the live streams lately. One final thing, for every 5k we get a new chocolate orange. We are almost at 75k. Help me hit it in the next week or so, and we will get a lovely new chocolate orange for the pyramid. And maybe, because a lot of you are very infuriated, I will sort out the colours and it will be a lot more colour coordinated. So since I asked you guys down in the comments like your experience of Joe Rogan, I thought it'd be good to start this video talking about my own experience with him and my own analysis of what has happened to him. So I never remember when I first became aware of Joe Rogan. I'd have to say it's probably the 2016 election cycle, because I was watching some of his podcasts, I remember with like Gary Johnson from the Libertarian Party, and I guess it wasn't when I completely despised like New Atheism, so I guess him being like Sam Harris adjacent probably made me watch him. And to start with, generally I had a pretty positive view of the guy. Like, he interviewed Gary Johnson, and even listening to it I remember just being like, damn, like he cannot push back on Gary Johnson's nonsense. But then I just gave him a pass in terms of like, he's just trying to be like your average guy asking questions. And when he would have like more progressive people on his show, like Cenk Uyger, Kasparian, and some other like more left-leaning people, he would come across fairly rational, like someone who understood why you need like progressive policies like universal healthcare, for example. So he seemed okay. And of course, he didn't just interview political people. He had interviews with multiple people who just did entertainment. So recently, I guess in the last 2 years when I stopped watching him, I thought his first podcast with Oliver Stone was really, really good. And it actually got Oliver Stone a book sale, because I went straight after the podcast and I bought Oliver Stone's audiobook. If I'm glad for one thing, I'm glad listening to Joe Rogan and Oliver Stone's conversation made me listen to that, because absolutely amazing autobiography. One of the most fascinating celebrities and filmmakers, despite, you know, what you think of his politics, totally worth a listen. And then like he had a pretty decent one with Edward Norton as well. I think this was at the back end of 2020. I think these are like the last ones I listened to him. I tried to listen to the one of him and Matthew McConaughey, because it was like hours long, And I'm really interested in Matthew McConaughey's acting career. But of course, he goes on the free thinker Joe Rogan's podcast. They don't really talk about his acting career. They just talk about philosophy. And here are two guys who have such a high opinion of themselves and also are idiots. I got through about like 40 minutes and stopped. I think the devil will play this on repeat when I eventually go to hell. But we're going to get into this a bit later. But of course, something really good Joe Rogan did at the start of the pandemic, he brought on a medical expert to talk about pandemics and talk about what we should expect.
No, so that's what we need to do here. We need to just have straight talk. Don't tell them it's low risk. That's like the hurricane, okay? You know, I would be really mad at you if I thought you were a hurricane forecaster and you knew this was coming, but you kept telling me, oh, it's low risk, don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah, once it hit.
Yeah, so that's what we need to do today is just say this is going to be challenging. And we're going to get through it, though. We are going to get through it.
I hope this wakes people up to the value of vaccines, too. There's so many wackos out there that think that vaccines are, you know, a scam or they're dangerous or there's so many people out there that won't vaccinate their children.
I know. And that's one of your best shows you ever did was Peter Hotez.
Yes,
he's a dear friend of
guy.
mine. I do too. He's a dear friend of mine, as you. And, you know, he is one of the champions out there on this very issue.
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's really an important point that, you know, we got to get this idea. These vaccines can be life-saving. If we had one right now, think how different this situation would be in we're in right now.
And massive credit to him back then doing that because he used his platform for good. But then slowly, as the pandemic kept going on, his brain was firmly broken by it, by lockdowns, by restrictions, by mandates, all these different things. And then eventually he didn't even get a vaccine himself. And then he just pumped himself full of like experimental treatments instead. Big brain Joe Rogan right here. But I guess the signs were always there with Joe Rogan because my problem with his content, even before his massive rightward shift, was him being this guy who would platform, in my opinion, quite dangerous people, and his podcast style would make them appear far more reasonable than they had any right to appear, and he couldn't push back on it. And that's just the question of, when you have such a massive platform like this, despite your intentions initially with it, do you have a responsibility to maybe research things enough or maybe push back enough against your guests if they're saying something quite controversial? Otherwise, your audience will just blindly follow what these people say. So when he had like Ben Shapiro on, when he had Alex Jones on loads of times, when he had Jordan Peterson on multiple times, and he could just never really push back against these guys. And then he actually said like these guys are like really, really smart, have people like Sam Harris on. And I think if you are a massive Joe Rogan fan from back in the day, even if you aren't like a massive conservative and you might reject him now, I think you could still have really bizarre politics because you were listening to all these figures, and the way he does his interviews is these guys will just seem like perfectly nice or intelligent or rational, when in reality the stuff they were pushing were often far-right politics in Ben Shapiro's case, or conspiracy theories like Jordan Peterson's case, or just like outright Western chauvinism in the case of them two and Sam Harris as well. And Joe couldn't really push back against that. But then he did some good things, like he had Tulsi Gabbard on to talk about the military-industrial complex before she went completely mask off and made everyone realise that she hasn't really changed since her days growing up in like this homophobic cult. Also, like having Bernie Sanders on, like really good interview with him, and a lot of people changed their mind about Bernie Sanders. Like I made a whole video about this like 3 years ago or so, and the comments were all like, I thought Bernie Sanders was this crazy communist, and now I just see like he's a perfectly rational guy who wants what's best for me. I'll probably vote for him. So, you know, it has its benefits as well. But recently, like I said, with the pandemic, he's firmly shifted rightwards. People like Russell Brand have done the exact same thing, and now Joe Rogan is firmly a conservative hero. Like conservative media absolutely love this guy, mainly for his medical misinformation, but also because he's like anti-woke, has said transphobic things, has lots of conservative people on his show. But I think a lot of Joe Rogan fans who might have started watching him, like when I first became aware of him in like 2015, have become sick of him because he has changed so much. So the subreddit is essentially in like open revolt against Joe Rogan. They constantly post memes about him being an idiot and like his guests being stupid like Jordan Peterson. They even hated on people like Elon Musk. So you might be surprised if you go on it. It has not been taken over by his conservative fans or his new conservative fans yet. But recently this has been circulating. So I want to go firstly through his more like recent controversy, which shows his changes, before showing you clips of him about like 2 years ago and further, where he is a bit more progressive. So the first one, which has been going viral, is they posted on the subreddit, Joe thinks Australia is going to ban its citizens from growing their own food and is disappointed when he finds out this is not true. So this is something that has been making the rounds on social media, this belief that the Australian government are going to ban people from growing their own food. Joe Rogan has had it out for Australia because he's believed numerous false things about them, and because of their harsh response to the pandemic, where they have had these massive lockdowns. Whether very strict, I don't think it was out of the ordinary for a lot of countries. Like the UK had an absolutely massive one at the start of 2021. You have even a little bit of knowledge about Australia, you know they are very, very strict about you bringing in like foreign food, foreign fruit, foreign crops, and foreign animals, because they do not want threats to their biodiversity. They do not want diseases brought in by foreign crops. They don't want foreign animals to grow the population and maybe drive out other groups of animals in Australia. Australia, of course, has very rich biodiversity. The steps they take are to ensure that remains and isn't threatened, and they have had numerous experiences with foreign diseases to crops and things being brought over throughout its history. So for them, it makes a lot of sense, but Joe Rogan thinks that's ridiculous, and maybe that's why he believes that they can't grow their own food. So let's watch this clip where he is talking about them doing this, and then in real time finding out that they don't do this.
You know, I want to find out what this is, but I read something briefly and I didn't get into the article. But they were saying that they were trying to pass a bill that would outlaw you growing your own food in Australia.
Oh, my God.
Did you read that?
Nah.
It was a part of Australia. I think it was New South Wales. Someone was trying to pass a law that won't allow you to grow your own food. And they were saying, well, you could grow your own food, and what if the disease is from your food? It infects the population, kills us all.
Oh,
we can't have that.
Oh, they pulled that card.
I want to know what their justification was, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with agricultural contamination, or, you could justify it if you're a real piece of. You could say, well, most pandemics have come from agriculture, animal agriculture. We can't have unchecked pig ownership. That's not fair. We can't even grow vegetables. What if your vegetables have ergot in them and diseases? You can't even go to the grocery store anymore, and you can't grow your food. Do you find anything?
You are now dependent upon the state.
Passes bill.
I know what to look for. Nothing's coming up. The closest thing I could find was something like this. That's not
new
what
food. No,
you
it's
were
not.
saying.
It's not New
It's New
Zealand.
Zealand.
It's in Australia.
I know, but this is close.
New Zealand is right around the corner.
Could have.
It's got to be a real thing. It seems too good to not be.
It's obviously.
I typed in outlaw growing food in Australia, and not a single thing comes up.
Hold on.
Except for that, which was a false thing.
Growing your own food.
They want us completely dependent.
Yeah, I can't find it either.
On,
Damn it. It better not be fake. It might be fake.
But even if it's fake, right? The fake is usually the warning.
Totally bizarre and pretty cringy with that weird voice he was doing. It's clearly he just has it out for the Australian government. And it's funny that, of course, that Jamie guy, I think in the clip, is basically saying, yeah, I can't find anything. It's fake. It's fake. But that's how misinformation spreads in real time. He's saying this and spreading it to his millions of listeners, and then it turns out completely made up. It plays into my mind that Joe Rogan is a massive boomer. He probably saw this on Facebook or something, and just like your boomer grandma, he shared it to loads of people without even checking. This is one of the more viral clips recently that the subreddit have turned against him on, so let's get into the comments quick. So someone's saying, so far gone, he's questioning Jamie's abilities to pull that up. Even if it's fake, Lamau, they've got such full-on boners for the New World Order theory. All they need is to see the words, even if it's fake. It's like their own sleeper agents. This is how the right-wing propaganda operates. Say the most obscene, malicious stuff to trigger troll liberals, turns into, wait, do we actually believe this stuff now? That fake voice he was doing was cringe. I barely made it through that. It was so cringy and weird to then be wrong. It's just absolutely hilarious. He fully made up a story in his own mind, or read a paragraph on Facebook or an article from a non-news source and decided to fully go in on it and believe it before looking it up. This is why Joe Rogan is dangerous, because he is too dumb to know he is wrong or remember he read something on Facebook. They are saying they want you to ban you from growing food. Who said that, Joe? I don't know. It was literally a Facebook post which Joe further proved by being unable to find any articles relating to it. He saw a fake Facebook post and regurgitated it. It better not be fake. Why do you want it to be real? Are you just looking to be outraged? That's exactly it. He's looking to be outraged. You saw how he built the whole narrative to go with it, and instead of being relieved that it wasn't true, he was disappointed and said it's too good not to be true. Why would anyone view that scenario as good? These people online and in mainstream media are deliberately manufacturing outrage for money and are destroying society. Why? For money, and to divert attention away from themselves and the wealth they hoard, while millions rot on the street and inequality is at all-time highs. It would be cool if Joe saw one of his old podcasts to realise how he wasn't always that brain dead. So you saw there, loads of his comments were upvoted, awarded. These aren't just like random comments I found at the bottom of this thread and sorted by new or something. These are the most popular comments in his own subreddit with 769k followers. Now, something Joe Rogan has been big on is like sort of progressive politics, like I've said before, in terms of like universal healthcare, or in the past UBI. Elon Musk is someone in the past who's also promoted UBI. Lots of progressive politicians have. People in the Labour Party have advocated for forms of UBI. Joe Rogan also had Andrew Yang on his podcast to talk about UBI in depth and seemed pretty convinced by Andrew Yang's arguments, even though I believe that's like a libertarian form of UBI, and Elon Musk's one as well, which I don't think is the answer, but I do think a form of UBI, which the old shadow chancellor of the Labour Party, John McDonnell, a socialist, was advocating for back in 2019, is something I agree with. So a lot of his followers are into this as well. And like you said, you don't have to be a leftist completely to believe in this. Even Richard Nixon was thinking about introducing a form of UBI. But recently, Joe Rogan has also come out against it. Very, very wealthy, $200 million Spotify deal Joe Rogan has come out against it. So the post saying, Rogan no longer thinks UBI is a good idea, says the pandemic changed his mind because people didn't want to work after getting money from the government.
What's the monthly payment stuff that they're going to come out with?
Universal
basic income.
I just think that was a good idea before the pandemic. During the pandemic, when everybody's getting the money from the government, people didn't want to work, and it was like, and I was like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah,
this is not smart.
Well, that's what they wanted. They wanted the universal basic. That's what they want, is universal basic income, and then
you got to give people some incentive to do things.
Doing it here.
$1,000 per month universal basic income pilot program on Austin City Council agenda. But I think for families that are struggling, that's one thing. But for everybody, like, they were going to give it to every person.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a free thing.
Yeah. I think it has to come with, like if I were to do a program, it would be more like a job program. Like, I'll pay you while you get these marketable skills, while you train in these marketable skills. But I'm not going to pay you to just, like,
do nothing.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of entitlement that people have today that they just did not have before, where they feel like the government owes them something, regardless of how little or how much they've put into the system. They feel like the government owes them something. So when you say to those people, hey, what do you think about universal basic income? Everybody gets $1,200 a month. They're like, we deserve it. You should fucking give us the money, man. And they start thinking goofy.
And then you get inflation.
Right.
Right?
That's not good.
Yeah, and that's what we're hit now.
Outpacing increases in salaries too.
Right.
Cost of living, and then you have supply shortages, so things are more expensive, harder to get.
Yeah. I mean, if everybody's get $1,200, what's going to happen to your rent?
I don't think it's a good idea to give everybody $1,200. I think some people need a fire lit under their ass. And if you want to make more exceptional people in this country, I don't think the way to do that is to give everybody $1,200.
Is that Joe Rogan who listened to Andrew Yang and accepted all of his arguments, or is that your 75-year-old mother who spends all her time on Facebook talking about how millennials are entitled and they need the incentive of poverty wages to actually do something? This sounds like Joe Rogan is just butthurt that maybe he went to his favourite restaurant and they couldn't serve him quick enough because, I don't know, people started quitting their jobs because they don't want to be treated like garbage anymore. $1,000 a month is really not the type of money where you can just quit your job and do nothing, right? What is the average rent in America? I read it was like 1.9k a month at the moment, right? So if you got that, you can't even pay your rent with it. And that is just the point of it. People think even something like $1,000 a month is just to make your life easier. What could you guys do with an extra $1,000 a month? Even if you are like fairly comfortable, you can afford your rent or your mortgage, you have a decent job and stuff, wouldn't it be nice to get a bit more money back in your pocket, which could stimulate the local economy? You'd probably spend it on things. You're not like a rich person who will just hoard all that wealth probably. So that's a good financial investment for the government as well. But isn't that better than spending untold billions and trillions on the US military, Americans. And wouldn't you rather every citizen get an extra $1,000 a month, which, like I said, could stimulate the economy? And there, of course, will be problems. Like, they're talking about some things with inflation. Although this has been debunked loads of times, how this wouldn't trigger like a massive inflation thing. There probably is something you'd have to enact in terms of like landlords who probably see this as an opportunity to eventually jack up the rent, even if there are laws against them increasing it by this amount. You know, they would think, well, you have more money, so you got to pay me more money. But overall, I think it's a good idea. But again, Boomer Joe Rogan, a guy who accepted Elon Musk saying this, a guy who accepted Andrew Yang saying this only like 2 and a bit years ago, now apparently because of the pandemic has broken his brain. No one wants to work. You just want to sit at home and do nothing. Seems the guy who's going through his divorced dad boomer phase and is just so insanely rich he doesn't realize how little that is for a lot of people to survive, and how many people in America are living on poverty wages and can't afford anything. Not to mention, America is a country with an insanely predatory healthcare system and a health insurance scam system which drastically inflates all the prices of your treatment just to get more money from you. But again, let's look at the subreddit reaction. So who can survive off $1,000 a month? You would still need to work. Yeah, Joe, everyone quit their jobs and stopped working because they got $2,000 from the government that one time. That's a genius take. If this was true, the Great Resignation would have lasted about 3 weeks before the $2,000 was spent and people had to go back to work. The truth is that the pandemic made people realize how much their lives improved by not working in rubbish, unrewarding jobs for no money. People that could afford to quit, people that were close to retiring quit, even people at the bottom that made nothing quit too, because the $9 an hour bar is set so low that you can pretty much do anything to scrape together $50 in a day, and you can do it without hating your life. Rogan is psychotic if he thinks that the job market wasn't permanently changed for the better thanks to the pandemic. That's what they want. They want to give you universal basic income and then silence. Just two very smart men making very smart arguments. Nothing to see here. I'm so surprised that rich dude doesn't want people to get help. He is likely on the take to say stuff like this. Rogan work ethic, quit construction after a few weeks, quit security job because it got too hard. Joe thinks what he does is work. Lamau, I'm not saying it's easy or not hard to be in his position, but he definitely wouldn't survive any minimum wage job at this point. He's gone soft. I'd like to see Joe work a normal minimum wage construction job for 12 hours a day and then try and say UBI isn't needed. Work 10 times harder than he is now and he still can't feed his family. So all good points there, but like I said, Joe Rogan is going full boomer, and I think the recent worship of him in conservative circles has just made him double down on being extremely ignorant. Like we saw it at the start with the fact-checking clip for the Australia thing. Like he was basically, you know, I want this to be true because it fits into my narrative that people now love me for. Now, there's another clip going viral on the subreddit where Rogan again is refuting Jamie's fact-checking with his own personal anecdotes. Something he likes to do a lot these days, so let's have a look at this clip as well.
You know what they done in Texas? You know what's crazy? A friend of mine went, and he's a white guy, and he went and they told him that they couldn't give it to him because of his age and his body mass, because he's white, but if he was Hispanic or black, they would be able to give it to him.
That's so messed up.
And he went, what? Well,
wait, what?
He said, if I looked exactly like my body now, but I had more melanin.
That's crazy.
You'd be able to. She goes,
because
yes,
of your skin tone.
Because you'd be in an at-risk group. You're not in an at-risk group. Yeah, it's a strange thing that we have going on in this country, and it happened very quickly. It's almost like if you woke up, if you were Rip Van Winkle, you know, and you maybe, let's say you got hit over the head in 2019 in September, and you went into a coma, and you woke up now, you'd be like, what?
You wouldn't even believe it. It's happening? A strange world. It's like a long episode of Black Mirror.
Fact check. No policy denies white people antibody treatment, Texas Health Department says. There's a video of it.
I know, and the video says that. Well, I know. So they talk about the video in this, and then they reached out to the Texas Health Services.
Yeah, but they absolutely did to this guy, I know. Like, people are definitely doing that.
Dude,
maybe they're...
That doesn't mean it's a policy. It means that person is an asshole, maybe.
I don't think so. I don't think... You mean the person at the clinic is
like
an
the
asshole?
nurse, whoever said that they couldn't do it.
But she was saying she was sorry. And this was the way that they had to do it. Well, I don't know. I mean, this might be covering up for...
Or it's not, but...
It's hard to say.
I think out of anyone in the world, Joe Rogan has the most friends who are in really weird situations because he loves personal anecdotes. That's something he's always loved. But yeah, it's just funny for him to see it, like, be debunked in real time, and then be like, well, yeah, it's probably still true, isn't it? It's still probably their policy because, personal anecdote, my friend, it happened to them. Well, there was a video I saw and it happened to one person. So therefore, it is the policy. And it's so crazy in this country, isn't it? In my echo chamber where I just make things up. But yeah, a guy basically rejecting all facts for his new agenda against restrictions and, you know, him loving and embracing medical information and the right wing. And you can see why a lot of his, you know, old fans are kind of done with him now. So now let's get into the subreddit's reaction to this clip. Powerful young Jamie realizes he has the ability to launch his own career, and he's in the position where so many fans are sick of Joe's ever-worsting political BS that calling him out actually boosts Jamie's fan base. I used to like it when I wasn't sure of Joe's politics. He'd have someone on from the left and then the next week the right. Wouldn't agree with everything either said, whereas now it seems the audience has molded him into a right-wing conspiracy theorist and his fact checker is now optional. Dude has lost any sense of wonder. He's chosen a side and only facts he's willing to entertain are the ones he wants to believe in. The show has become a bore. It's not even the side he's chosen. It's like stop beating the same drum episode after episode. I guess he probably thinks he can't help himself. It's all he probably thinks about. And the sycophants he surrounds himself with, there's just no entertainment value to it anymore. It's FB memes from your racist grandpa in an echo chamber. I think that's the best one. Seriously, he's saying this clip how people in 2019 wouldn't believe the 2021 version of America, but 2019 Rogan wouldn't recognize this boomer either. So like I said, most of these comments are the top comments on these posts. It's pretty clear a lot of his audience are done with him. They're not all someone like me who is like firmly anti-capitalist, leftist, and, you know, has my very clear positions of why I don't like someone like Joe Rogan in the first place. And honestly, the clips I showed you are actually pretty tame for the stuff he's been platforming over the last couple years. The main reason I kind of steered away from the more inflammatory medical misinformation is mainly because YouTube will probably take down the video, and it sucks for small creators like me, but I've seen this happen to so many people, so I wasn't going to entertain that. But you guys will know basically all the stuff he's been pushing, all this medical information. I've talked about it a tiny bit, and why that applies to a certain political group in the United States. But also the UBI clip and some other stuff show what a Facebook-obsessed boomer this guy has become. But like I said, we're going to show you, here is a montage from the subreddit of all the times he entertained progressive messaging and how it seems pretty unthinkable he would ever go back to this.
I really believe if Michelle Obama runs, she wins.
She's good.
She's great. She's the wife of the best president that we have had in our lifetime. I've never voted right-wing in my life. I consider universal basic income a really good idea. I want free college education.
Take it easy.
Hello, Bernie.
How are you, Joe?
Wonderful. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I like Tulsi and I like Bernie. That's it.
Oh, yeah?
Everybody else can eat shit.
Look at you. Progressive.
Yeah, I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. I think he's looking out for the interests of the working people, and I think he wants people to have a better life and do better. And I'm all for that. And if that means I have to pay more in tax, like people think, oh, you're a socialist. I've heard people say that. Oh, you're a fucking socialist, bro. Like, first of all, he's not even a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. It's a different thing. I would like to spend more in taxes if they could fix inner city communities and take these poor neighborhoods and throw a fuckload of spend more. 87% of scientists said that human activity is driving global warming. I'm very pro-choice. I'm very women's rights, civil rights, gay rights, trans rights. I'm even universal health care. Obviously, this protected status is driving me crazy. This thing that Trump's doing with children that were born in other countries and then brought over here as children, and then they're talking about deporting them. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, that's
that kind of shit. And the hard right version of that is despicable. These people that I see online, why didn't they apply for citizenship? Oh, who knows? Maybe because they're 13. I don't know the law. You don't take parents and kids and separate them. You just don't. You know Alonzo?
No, who's it?
A funny comedian.
Yeah.
He said, he goes, not all Donald Trump supporters are racist, but all racists are Donald Trump supporters.
He definitely awakened that side.
But as far as trans people, some trans people listening to this, I got nothing but love for you. For everybody. And in fact, Eddie Izzard is one of my all-time favorite guests.
Oh, I love Izzard.
The right-wing thing is just an easy way to dismiss me, because I'm not right-wing. I can't recommend your book, Race Matters, enough.
I absolutely forgot that he also did that podcast with Cornell West, which was actually really good. And that's another one I remember. When did I even watch that? Like 2019? I remember driving back from somewhere and listening to it on like a 3-hour car ride. But yeah, it shows that Joe Rogan used to have at least some agreeable positions with left-wing people. And imagine if he said that today. Imagine if he said that to all his new conservative fans, people who've come over, Elon Musk simps, still simps for Jordan Peterson, simps for Donald Trump, and all these conservatives who worship him. Imagine if he came out and just said all that stuff. But he just does not believe that stuff anymore. And I believe fundamentally his critical thinking skills are really bad, but often he just says a lot of things that the last person said to him. But I still believe old Joe Rogan did have some sort of a liberal-leaning belief that would make him support things like UBI, like he says in that clip. And it's so clear to everyone how much he is either grifting or how much the money and fame has gone to his head, or how much fundamentally, like many people, the pandemic has absolutely rotted his brain to make him into this right-wing conspiracy theorist, which most of his old school fans are utterly sick of. And like I said, it's also really boring because he only talks about the same thing every time. So people like Joe Rogan, I always didn't think it's great if you uncritically listen to him and like listen to everything he says and absorb all these ideas in this way. But again, there were redeeming things. You could be a Joe Rogan fan who supports universal healthcare in America, who supports UBI, who's against Donald Trump, like Joe Rogan used to say. But now if you listen to Joe Rogan, or you're a new fan of Joe Rogan, you're getting none of that, and you're just going to be radicalized even further. Now, I read a good article about someone who watched 350 hours, or listened to 350 hours of Joe Rogan, especially like more recent episodes. And it was an interview with someone from Media Matters. And I thought it was pretty interesting, so I'm going to read a bit of it for you. So this guy is called Alex Patterson, so I want to read you some of this. So you said you've been tracking him since 2020. How have you seen Rogan's rhetoric change in that time? I believe he's become more emboldened to push baseless conspiracy theories and right-wing lies over the past year. Since I started reporting on Rogan's podcast, he's broken into the mainstream coverage fairly often. First, with his lie about the left-wing people starting wildfires in Oregon, and throughout all of that reporting, at least from my view, he hasn't faced any real punishment from Spotify, and I think that's emboldened him to continue pushing hate and lies on his podcast. Just from listening to him every day, he's by no means remitting conspiracy theories and false rhetoric on his show. If anything, he's leaning into it more. He's celebrated in conservative spaces for it. He's a darling of the conservative right in the US. I know you and Media Matters more broadly cover the wider world of the right, like Fox and OAN. Do you see any parallels between that and Rogan? Yeah, I completely see it as related. Rogan is someone who celebrates himself as a so-called independent thinker, who has both conservative and progressive values, and I think that perfectly illustrates our general media landscape's bend towards the right-wing views, and over-accommodating right-wing views and not challenging right-wing misinformation. So I think he plays a pretty central role in that landscape, and he's also deeply connected to the network of conservative media. He hosts Ben Shapiro, Alex Jones, he's a supporter of Tucker Carlson, who we know is Fox News' hate monger in chief. I think he plays a central role in right-wing misinformation. Is there anything else you think people should know about Rogan that they might not be considering? One thing we've done at Media Matters is try to document how social media algorithms and far-right online communities can radicalize everyday people fairly easily. I think Rogan is a good example of that. Let's say you're a young man listening to Joe Rogan and you want to get tips on bodybuilding or how to eat healthily. Starts discussing stuff with Ben Shapiro, and perhaps you go to Ben Shapiro's website, The Daily Wire, and there you fall into a cesspool of hatred and bigotry. And once you click on a Daily Wire article, if you share it on Facebook, you're just going to be led further and further down the far-right rabbit hole. That can take someone from being an everyday person to suddenly being fed news and misinformation about right-wing lies. I think it's important to keep in mind that Joe Rogan spreading misinformation has real-world consequences that can have really dire effects for marginalized people. So I think a lot of what was said there is stuff you could apply to Joe Rogan already, in that he could be part of this, social media rabbit hole where it will radicalize people. But now Joe Rogan is like firmly part of that radicalization himself, because you will get these right-wing views and these conspiracy theories from just listening to the podcast now. You don't even have to listen to a podcast with Ben Shapiro and then go and find Ben Shapiro and be radicalized by Ben Shapiro. It's like you'll be radicalized by Joe Rogan and then be further radicalized by other right-wing figures. And there's nothing, in my opinion, that's very redeeming about Joe Rogan's show anymore, because the pandemic has so heavily broken his brain and pushed him so far away from any sort of liberal progressive viewpoints, even saying like UBI would make everyone lazy because his waiter at his favorite restaurant has quit or something. It gives me a bit of hope to see that a lot of his fans are done with him, because in my opinion, if you told me that his fans would follow him anywhere back before his slide into the right wing, I would say that most of his fans would. So it's good to see a lot of his fans are completely done with this, but now he is wildly popular in conservative circles instead. So like Elon Musk, he's probably going to keep pandering to his new conservative audience. That's where the money is. That's where the ego boost is. That's where the echo chamber is. It makes you feel like you're the smartest person in the world. And I fully expect Joe Rogan is never going to go back from that. So overall, Joe Rogan, someone before the pandemic you could listen to, would have maybe a good podcast with a celebrity, could do a cool interview with Bernie Sanders that would paint him in a very human light, would have right-wing guests on, could be part of this pipeline to people getting more radicalized by far-right conservative ideals in America, but at the end of the day, did have some redeeming factors because he supported progressive policies and maybe helped make them more popular by platforming people who supported them, but that's all gone away now, where he's firmly now in the conservative camp, and now he radiates conservative, boomer, divorced dad energy, and I don't think there's any hope with this guy. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Follow me on social media at the Kavernacle, on Twitter, on Instagram, support me on Patreon, join my Discord, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.